Good evening, guys, and welcome out to Revolution. So we are going to look at the issue, the Complutensian Polyglot and the Rhodian Codex, putting the issue to bed. And so now I hope my video will work well. I've only got like one bar of Wi-Fi, which is a bit of a shame, but usually I've got a very strong internet, but for some reason it's a little bit weak at the moment. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to look back on the issue of the Complutensian Polyglot and the Rhodes Codex. So what I want to do is I want to play this video. It goes, maybe I'll go for about 2 or 3 minutes. And it'll just sort of explain where I was with this issue about 3 years ago. Okay, so it always helps if I put the audio on. So let's just go back here. There we go. You're studying 1 John 5:7. You're looking at where I was going to say rabbit trailers. What you think. So I'm just going to look at a few other issues here. So yeah, I'd encourage you to read through that. Let me know what you think in the comments. And, you know, I really need to come up to speed with all this stuff. It is quite I was going to say rabbit trail. It's a bit of a dog leg where, you know, you're studying 1 John 5:7. You're looking at Erasmus, and it's like, okay, you sort of have to deal with the Complutensian Polyglot. Then you have to deal with the Lateran Council. Then you have to deal with this guy. And it's like you sort of drifting further and further. But this is why even just to know about the comment, you have to have understanding of all these issues. And so this is one of the reasons also why I'm doing these videos, because at the end of the day, I'm forced to go through these. I'm forced to read through them. And obviously, if I had a very eloquent voice and I could read very fast, I would read all that for you. But this forces me to go through this and to weigh up whether I should say this or say that. And a lot of the time I'm looking at, 20% of the article. I'm like, I have no idea about that. I don't even know what that is. And so it's challenging for me to then learn what that is and look at what people are saying about it. So in 5-10 years. Sorry about that. Bandwidth just died. I'll just continue. Challenging for me to then learn what that is and look at what people are saying about it. And that's going to sharpen my sword. And so in 5-10 years, I will be an expert on 1 John 5:7. And so on these issues. Now, I believe I've already got enough bullets in my gun to win any debate with anyone, anywhere around the world. If anyone wants to debate 1 John 5:7, I will debate with them. But it's these issues here, the details, going through the weeds. It's like, okay, let's tidy all these up. And I'm constantly going through my website, adding information, tweaking information, and reading through it. And the good thing about having a website like this, a bit like Wikipedia, is sometimes I'm forced to read through the article just for the sake of, seeing if the grammar is correct and just for the sake of seeing if it's in a correct chronological order. And so I might read through the page like 5, 6, 7 times and it becomes part of me. And that's what I've found with this website. It's very helpful. It's sort of like become part of my brain in a sense where I'll be doing something. I'm like, actually, it's on this, like this section about Erasmus, and he was revered by Cisneros. Okay, so I sort of go on a bit of a tangent there, but I just thought I'd show that was 3 years ago, and I was sort of saying, well, I'm learning, I'm growing. I should be able to adding this stuff to my website, but I haven't got time, busy, blah, blah, blah. So I guess in a way, I'm making a bit of an excuse as to why I made an error on Codex Rhodensis. Okay, so this is on my Facebook here. So I've only just got half of it up, so I don't show all the rest of the stuff that comes up on my Facebook. So what we see is Francis TurretinFan, said, I noticed Nick Sayers took some time on his recent live to discuss my previous post on the Complutensian Polyglot and the Johannine comma. While he was certainly gracious in his response, his comment sparked my interest in whether Stunica, which is spelt usually with a Z in the old style, had argued that he had seen a Greek manuscript matching the Complutensian polyglot reading. The result of my admittedly brief survey of the literature seems to suggest that I still don't know what Nick Sayers is referring to. That's not to say I've disproved the anecdote, just that I cannot seem to locate the source. Okay, so we will get that one up. We'll look at that soon. Now, Heffen Jones, I mentioned Heffen in my previous video. He said, I think it's Nick who's mistaken, unless he's got some information to add. Erasmus directly pinged Stunica for not referring to Rhodensis. Erasmus and others since have concluded that Stunica didn't have manuscript support. I do have Stunica's initial first round annotations, and he fails to appeal to any manuscript and certainly didn't appeal to the Rhodensis regarding the comma. Nick seems quite certain maybe he has access to further research that might enlighten us. And so that was the first post. So that was a couple of days ago now. And the second post is just following up on the Stunica. So this is TurretinFan again. Just following up on the Stunica and Johannine comma point, it seems that Stunica implicitly acknowledges that the Rhodian Codex did not have the reading that ultimately was printed. I wonder whether you have some comments at Stunica that say otherwise, or any other reason to doubt that conclusion that I, not alone, have reached on this point. So Heffen Jones again comments and says, Erasmus made the same observation. Stunica appeals to Rhodensis immediately before and immediately after his comments on 1 John 5:7b, but does not appeal to Rhodensis when discussing the comma, instead focusing on the fact that Greek manuscripts are corrupt, suggesting further that Stunica had no access. So this issue of that he had no access to Greek manuscript, I think that's read into the whole concept, but I am in agreement with everything else here. Suggesting further that Stunica himself had no access to a Greek manuscript with the comma Johannium, or else he would have mentioned that they were counterexamples to the general corruption. Instead, Stunica appeals to the Latin. Erasmus noted this. My access to Stunica's letter responses is non-existent, but from Erasmus' replies to them, which I do have, I don't see further evidence that Stunica later appealed to Rhodensis. Okay, so I'll just open a few other pages. Okay. Yes, that is the one that I'm looking for. Very good. I'm glad I found that one. And I will shut down my Facebook because it is chewing my bandwidth up. And I'll put TurretinFan's blog here. I might just go to his main page. Here we go, because he's written a couple of articles. And we'll go through these. And so he did mention Stunica. Now, at the same time, I was examining Stunica's edition. So I think I have it here so we can look at it. Now, I have a ton of pages open. I have so many pages open that it's embarrassing. Now, I've just got to find the exact place. Now, I know it's on. Here we go. So this is actually where we were going with this. So this is Stunika's on Hathi Trust. So I will zoom into this. Now, so what happened? Stunica contacted Erasmus, and I'm pretty sure this was in 1520, and they talked about all sorts of things. And so he did basically a whole book showing where there were issues. So this goes for hundreds of pages, or actually 116 pages, which I guess isn't it isn't that big, but it is quite detailed. It's as detailed as Erasmus's annotations that he has at the end of his Greek edition. So we can see here, this is going through Peter. So it goes through Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and continues through Second Peter, and he's dealing with Greek issues. And oftentimes he's quoting this Rhodiensi. He's written that in Latin. So the Rhodes Codex. Okay. So now when it comes to 1 John 5:7, now he does mention the Rhodes Codex in the verse before, which is 1 John 3:16. Then when we go to the verse after, which is 1 John, I'm pretty sure it's 1 John 5:20, he mentions, he can see here where it says the Rhodes Codex here, but he actually does not mention it in the 1 John 5:7 section. So I think what's happened over the years is because it has the Rhodes mentioned here, the Rhodes mentioned there, it tends to be sort of blurred in, because I didn't get this concept just from looking at these original source documents, or else I wouldn't have come to that conclusion. But I came to the conclusion looking at how others have read this document. So if we continue on from there. Okay, so there we are. There's another one, which is, yeah, someone's taken a digital snap of that to put it online. But you can see here where the Rhodensi Codex, which is the Greek codex that was often employed for readings in the Complutensian Polyglot, and then we see it's mentioned again here, but it is not mentioned in this section here, which is all to do with the Commiahenian. And so okay, so I've showed those two. Now, one thing I want to point out is Stephen Avery, he actually pointed this out in 2021. So that might have been when I made my first video, 3 years ago, I guess. We're looking at nearly 4 years on this. And so discussing this. So he says, Nick Sayers, one difficulty of claiming the Complutensian Heavenly Witness was based on a now unknown Greek manuscript is that it came up rather forcefully in the Erasmus Stunica correspondence, where Erasmus asked about the Rhodian manuscript and Stunica did not give a cohesive answer. Okay, so basically what is mentioned here. Now, I'm going to quickly go to raising the ghost of Arius. So I've got that in my Adobe Acrobat format here. I'll just make that nice and big. Now, if we type in Rhodes or just RHO, okay, Rhodian, Rhodes, there's quite a lot. Erasmus wrote in his Apologia, so his response to Stunica. So he wrote his response between June and September 1521, and it was published in October. This exchange would initiate a remarkable series of no less than 13 attacks and counterattacks between the two men. On the matter of the comma, the editors of the Complutensian Bible claimed to have taken their reading of the Greek text of verses 7 and 8 from a Rhodian manuscript at the Library of Alcala. But the reading in the Complutensian Bible is quite different from that in the only two extant manuscripts that contain the comma in Greek, Montfortianus and GA 629, which thus cannot be the Rhodian manuscript. Okay, so it's interesting here when you read this. Grantley MacDonald, who is considered by the critical text guys as being the main guy for the comma. I mean, he's not a Christian, he's an atheist, but his work, he's examined a lot of this material. But clearly here he is saying that on the matter of the comma, the editors of the Complutensian Bible claimed to have taken their reading of the Greek texts from a Rhodian manuscript. Okay, so that's clearly what Grantley MacDonald said. So I understand, like on my thumbnail. Now I'll just grab that and explain it a little bit. Where are we? Adobe. Illustrator. Here we go. I'll grab this picture up. Now, the Complutensian Polyglot and the Rhodes Codex, and I've got a little picture of Fonzie here, and he's like, I don't know if you ever watched Happy Days, Fonz, he couldn't say he was wrong ever. I was wrong. He couldn't say he was wrong, and so, and that's what I'm saying in this video. So, but at the same time, I'm showing you why I was wrong. And I know in my last video, I was quite blunt in saying, there's some of these scholars, they're saying all this sort of stuff. It's really hard to trust what they're saying. Because I guess the thing is, you do trust in scholars, So say Grantley MacDonald here, he's saying that he did have the Rhodian manuscript. So what I've done, I've read through that and gone, he's saying that this Rhodian manuscript, the Complutensian Polyglot guys were claiming that's where they had the reading. So I'm like, okay, and I've run with that for quite a long time, but it's not accurate. And so we can see here, he's got, the Greek text in the Complutensian reads this. Okay, so the parallel Latin text reads this. So he's not really talking about the Rhodes Codex here. He's just comparing GA 29 and Codex Montfortianus, which I was showing in my other video, doesn't match with Codex Britannicus that Erasmus is talking about. So it can get quite messy. But so then he continues on. Erasmus suspected that the Rhodian manuscript was a fiction. So he said that the Complutensian Polyglot guys produced this manuscript to say we got the comma from there. So, but then he's saying Erasmus thought the Rhodian manuscript just didn't exist, implying that the reading of the comma in the Complutensian Polyglot had simply been translated in the Greek from the Latin Vulgate, that's a completely different issue of whether the Rhodian manuscript had it, or whether they had another manuscript with it, or that's a whole separate issue. But it is to do with the Complutensian Polyglot and evidence. But and so that's why when I was reading through Heffen Jones's comments, I was just sort of saying, well, that's like another issue. But I understand that could be the next place where people go, because in my mind, what Stonecker did is he basically said to Erasmus, unfaithful scribes are taking this verse out. Now, whether that was Greek or Latin, I'm not 100% sure. But unfaithful scribes were attacking this verse, whether it was in Greek or Latin. So to me, that was something that Erasmus actually employed in his annotations as one of the reasons why he wanted to include it. And then he talks about Britannicus and other things. But it seems like Grantley MacDonald has actually sort of created his own narrative on this. So let me just keep reading this section. So Erasmus thought the manuscript was a fiction, implying the reading of the comma in the Complutensian text had simply been translated into Greek from the Latin Vulgate. Erasmus begins his critique of Stunica's annotations on 1 John 5:7-8 with a taunt. Where is that Rhodian Codex of yours slumbering all this time? For his own part, Erasmus claims somewhat sententiously, though not entirely truthfully, that he had not taken up the task of amending the readings of his Greek codices, merely that of reporting their contents. Since he had already responded to Lee on this matter, Erasmus continued he would keep his remarks relatively brief. So it does, from reading this, it does seem that Grantley MacDonald has made this claim that the Complutensian Bible claimed to have taken their reading. The editors of the Complutensian Bible claimed to have taken their reading from verse 7 and 8 from the Rhodian manuscript, okay? Then saying that Erasmus didn't believe them and thought it was the Rhodian manuscript was made up. And then it goes on to, talking about Erasmus saying, where's the Rhodian codex of yours been slumbering all this time? So that is a false narrative. What actually has happened? The Stunica has replied to Erasmus. He has mentioned the Rhodian Codex in many, many places throughout the scriptures. But then when it comes to 1 John 5:7, he doesn't mention the Rhodian Codex. And so then Erasmus on this issue of 1 John 5:7 in his annotations is like, so where's your Rhodian manuscript here? And he was, and I think the thing is, it's sort of like, okay, where is your, this codex of yours? Where's it been slumbering all this time? Now, I was looking at some alternative ways of rendering this. So I might be able to go to, where are we? I think I just had like a Google Translate open. It was quite an interesting way of looking at it. But I was looking also at ChatGPT. It does quite a good job of that, but I don't have that up at the moment, or maybe I do. Anyway, so this is the context. Erasmus says here, from the authority of Jerome, which we have just seen is no authority at all, being a forgery. So that's someone's, added that. It's actually quoting Erasmus in the Latin there, so it's actually in English. So Stunica teaches that the Greek codices are often corrupted, but in the meantime, where does that Rhodian Codex sleep? So it doesn't mean he's mocking or anything. He's just like, okay, so where is this codex? Where is it in the Vatican? Is it in Spain? Is it in the libraries of Spain? Whereabouts is this? Moreover, we did not undertake the task of correcting the Greek codices, but of rendering in good faith what was in them. Okay, so he's addressing several things there. But I just thought I'd bring that up, that sometimes it can be read into things. Oh, well, Erasmus was being sarcastic, or he's being facetious, or he's lying, and this type of thing. I think going back 500 years and putting how we would speak, sarcastically or whatever, into these type of texts, you've got to be completely fluent in that person and know that person, know their writings to come up with those type of concepts. Because we see people do this with the Bible all the time, the last 12 verses of Mark. Oh, it doesn't sound like Mark. But then when you talk to Maurice Robinson, who's an expert, and James Snap Jr., they're like, no, it does sound like Mark. So it's like, the resurrection happened. So, of course, they're going to talk about different things, But anyway, the Pricope Adulteri, it doesn't sound like John. But then other people like, no, it's exactly like John. So it just depends, on someone's presupposition. So I will shut some of these pages down as I go because I do want to clear up some things. Now I'll check my live feed, make sure I'm still alive here. Okay, where are we? I'll drop that down. Might have a few comments here. Not too many. That's cool. So who is Stunica? So this says Zunica. But it is in the Latin, the Stunica. So that's usually how we spell it, because this takes a few little, tildes and things above the letters. So he was a Spanish humanist and biblical scholar, noted for his controversies with Erasmus and this guy who I can never pronounce his name well, and leadership of the team for the Complutensian Polyglot Bible. He was born around 1470 to an aristocratic family. And so, yeah, it's a very, very simple thing there. One of his works is his annotations to Erasmus. So the thing is, too, like this would have actually helped Erasmus quite a lot. I know people don't like critique. I actually invite critique, and I love it because it corrects me. And also then I can look at things like what Grantley MacDonald said here about the Rhodian Codex and go, whoa, I've been sort of tricked by this book, I guess, thinking, because this is the book that James White said is the definitive book on the comma. And he's like, if you read this, you won't believe the comma is genuine. And it's like, okay, and I'm not saying that this is a huge deal. It's just a factual error. But I would expect more from someone who is a scholar. I know some people expect a lot from me, but hey, I'm just a dude. I'm not a scholar at all. But let's look at some of these other. Here we go, Rhodensis. Yeah, and then there's this anecdote that Rhodensis actually ended up being used to make fireworks, and someone shot it in the air. And it seems like when I read through Pawson's material, he seems to just sort of mock. And apparently he was a really heavy drinker. And I just sort of pictured some of these guys like, Dawkins and other, like comedians. They're just trying to be funny and come up with these things. But apparently it was sold as useless parchments to the manufacturer of fireworks in 1749. And it was feared that the Rhodian Codex was one of these. And so people are making up this type of thing, or, can you imagine, it's a Bible manuscript. It's just useless. Turn it into fireworks, and just shooting it up in the air. It just sounds like some made up story. But sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction. But to me, I'm just sus on it instantly. Okay, let's see if there's any other Rhodian. Okay, so we can read through. See, he says that earlier, but then later on, he probably should have seen what Erasmus saw in his annotations. Okay, so I'll go down to the annotations. So Grantley has Appendix 2, Erasmus Annotations, and the Johannine comma. So he has all the editions, and the main one is based on the 1535. And so sometimes it might just have a little footnote saying this was in the 1527 edition, or this was in the 1522. So what does Erasmus directly say about this issue? So I'll just go down to where I can remember that it is. Okay. Okay, yes. So he's just finished talking about something else. So yeah, he's talking about, where are we? For I for one do not see how the view rejected by the Arians can be upheld with the help of speculative reasoning. But finally, since the entire passage is obscure, it does not have much power to refute heretics. But we have responded to our calumniator on this matter rather fully with an apologia. So I think it's talking about the concept of having, these three are one in verse 8 inserted by Arians to try and come against the Trinitarian verse that preceded it. So then you have the Latin here, and then on the next page you have the English translation. So he says, one thing I shall add, though my dear Stunica so often boasts of his Rhodian Codex, to which he attributes such authority, he has strangely not adduced it as an oracle here, especially since it almost agrees with our Latin codices so well that it might seem to be a lesbian straight edge. It's not a blue-haired, short hair-cutted skateboarder who doesn't take drugs. It is basically that's just sort of a fancy way of saying a back translation from the Latin, and basically made to fit the other language. So, but what we're looking at here, he's saying, okay, so Stunica, he often boasts of this Rhodian Codex, okay, and he attributes a lot of authority to that, but he does not bring it up here. So that confirms that Erasmus, when he was reading Stunica's material, which we saw earlier, he didn't see that this here was talking about the Rhodes Codex. Now, we looked earlier, it mentions it in chapter 3, verse 16. It mentions it in chapter 5, verse 20, the Rhodian Codex, but it does not mention it here. Okay, so that's... now, I don't think that Grantley MacDonald made this up either. I think he got it from people. Now, so this is why I've entitled this video, laying this issue to bed. We've sort of got to move on from here. That it is not. So I'll shut some of these down. We might have time to look at Ravianus, but it's another manuscript. So yeah, the raising the Ghost of Arius issue. So this was noticed by Stephen Avery, and so of course I neglected to look at Stephen Avery's material, and I was just going through a whole bunch of stuff. And but he, in 2021, basically pointed out that the Erasmian Codex, the Rhodes Codex was not mentioned by Stunica, and Erasmus in his annotations said that it wasn't mentioned as well. So so I'm just looking for some sort of evidence. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to put this link into the chat just in case anyone wants to do any more study on that. So this is Stephen Avery. This has been up for quite a few years now. And I might have even read this and just forgot. So it says here, this is the Stunica 1520 referenced above that gives verses from the Rhodian manuscript. Grantley may be supplying this information from his own checking, or perhaps the other, so like Andrew Brown or Delitzsch reference. So what Stephen Avery did is he actually went through Grantley MacDonald's book, which Grantley MacDonald's book, the Raising the Ghost of Arius, that became a different title book. I always forget it, but it is about Erasmus. And the first one is his dissertation. So some of the errors are corrected in the book form. But yeah, so he says here, the BCEME, which is the book of Grantley MacDonald. I actually had it up to remember it, and now I forgot it. I was like, no, I'll remember that, and it's gone. I'm like a goldfish, you swim around the bowl, and it's gone. But it says here, Stunica had not cited any manuscript evidence for the comma against Erasmus. So Grantley MacDonald did what I'm doing in this video. He corrected himself and said, actually, he didn't. Stunica did not cite any manuscript evidence. Well, actually, it's sort of a bit of a... Because the thing is, I'm not discounting the fact that Stunica had evidence. I'm just discounting that he mentions the Rhodes Codex. The whole concept of him having evidence, Greek evidence to point to for that, that's like a whole separate issue, and we'll have to look at that maybe some other time. But he only purported evidence of the fathers. Okay. Moreover, an unprejudiced reader would presently guess from the marginal note in the very Complutensian edition itself, that the editors put this text upon the authority of St. Thomas Aquinas, who knew no Greek. Notice Thomas Aquinas didn't know any Greek. There was a Great Wall of China between Greece and Italy at that time. No, only joking. And not from their Vatican manuscripts. And so, no, it seems like it's based on the authority of St. Thomas Aquinas for the latter reading of 1 John 5:8. That's what the marginal note is mostly about. Clark also cited Milner's sporty statement that the comma was not present in the scriptural text known to Tertullian and Cyprian. Okay, so it's sort of mixing in a whole bunch of things in there. But the main thing is that he does say that they did not cite any evidence, where clearly in the manuscript that I was reading before, he does say that the Complutensian guys, they claimed to have evidence. So it says here, on the matter of the comma, the editors of the Complutensian Bible claimed to have taken their reading of the Greek text of verses 7 to 8 from a Rhodian manuscript. So he has changed his view on this as well. So I've read through this and gone, that's what they've done. Now, obviously, Grantley, he would have gone through a whole bunch of material. So what we can see has also happened here. If I go and open my Facebook, I'll jump onto TurretinFan's page. Now, I'm not sure if anything's been added since I've since I did my last video. Okay, so he's just added those two posts about me. A different thing. Okay, so we've got 39 comments there. I think I went through most of these comments the other day. Yeah, they all seem like about a week old. The discussion between Michael George, so that's Mike Holner. Okay. So Mike Ferrando jumped in. Okay, I bet you I've got it on most relevant. I hate that. I hate that setting. Put it on all posts. So yeah, here we go. Francis Turretin. We'll just open all that right up, and I'll scroll down to the bottom. Okay, so we have a standard sacred text article. Okay, which is very interesting. So this is from the Van Cleeks, who I just interviewed. Okay, so talking about Semler and Wettstein, who were mentioned. Now, I wonder if the Rhodes Codex gets mentioned here. RHO. No. Maybe Codex. Codex Britannicus gets a mention. But that seems to be about it. So, I think there is sort of like a side issue. Is there any Greek that the Complutensian guys base their readings on? So that's a whole separate issue. My thing is that the Rhodes Codex, somewhere along the line, someone said, oh, they used, Stonica mentioned the Rhodes Codex as evidence. And so it's in older works. So we see Grantley MacDonald has mentioned this. He's corrected it in his other edition. So I guess, he's probably had a few scholars go through and sort of proofread it and go, actually, this is not what really happened. You're going to have to change that. So he did, and kudos to him for changing it. But, okay, so I will shut that down, and I'll continue on with this post of TurretinFan. Okay, so Michael George is giving his material there. Okay. Okay, so yeah, so we actually have some things from one day ago. So I think I stopped it about 5 days ago, but we have TurretinFan one day ago says, finally, Michael George, from the Lyle book that you've mentioned in your original comment and linked to by your PDF URL above, this is one of the best known examples of the formation and introduction of a gloss into the text. The Complutensian editors inserted these words with the exception of the last 5, and these 3 are 1, and made a note, the longest of the 5 notes. So that does seem to just be talking about the Greek-Latin issue. Heffen Jones says, I was familiar with some but not all of Michael George's list. I chased down some others. Only 3 support the Commuhanium. 3 explicitly reject it. Lyle, as you point out. Okay, so the Rhodensis. John Lee has nothing substantial to say either about the Commuhanium or Rhodensis. I'm only just not showing Facebook because some people post stuff and comment, and it's, Facebook's a weird place where you do have personal chats and public chats, sort of thing. And so I'm just skipping through this. So John Lee has nothing substantial to say about this. So Lee neither affirms the Commuhanium nor helps identify Rhodensis. Bentley does not identify Rhodensis as the source of the Commuhenium. Yeah, so I think, yeah, okay, we've got some more comments. Bentley's New Light article supports his point of view, so I went through that as well. Okay. So specifically looking for the Rhodes issue, I'm sort of seeing a lot written about the Latin, etc. Okay, so it says here, Michael George, to be honest, none of your sources actually argue and document their claim. Lamy seems to be mistaken on Rhodensis being the Complutensian polyglot source. So that's what TurretinFan has in his article, which we'll check out in a minute. There's a few other things. Okay, so it's just 21 hours ago. So these guys have been at it in the chat, and that's all good. I'll catch up with that soon. But let's go to TurretinFan's blog. So he talks about Lamy. So firstly, we'll just go to his Stunica annotation. So if you want to look at what Stunica said in his annotations, he does go through, so I read through these today. He does go through the Epistle of John, chapter 1, and he is mentioning the Rhodes Codex. So we can see that clearly here, the Rhodian Greek Codex. Okay. And so then we see from chapter 5, it's talking about three that bear witness in heaven, Father, Word, and Holy Ghost, these three are one, etc. And he does not mention the Rhodian Codex. But then when we get to verse 20, he does mention the Rhodian Codex again. So that's the issue. So that's brought out very clearly here by TurretinFan. He has the Latin here. And then I think it's today, June 17th. So I guess it's today in America. It says the American Ecclesiastical Review in 1897 included an article, The Decision of the Holy Office on the Commuhenium. The Right Reverend Thomas Jos Lamy. And so let's just read what he said. The subject of the Complutensian and its alleged sources comes up a few times. So this is direct quotations. We've got four quotes here. Within a few years, the Polyglotto Complutensis, the publication which had been retarded a long time, finally appeared. It contained a Greek text of the New Testament printed before that, followed by Erasmus, and there was the celebrated verse. And it's got the footnote 1, which has most likely after the Codex Rhodensis, of which Stunica speaks. So you can see people were showing that Codex Rhodensis is the source. And so this is what TurretinFan's bringing out as well. So I'm saying Brantley McDonald's probably gotten it from somewhere like this as well and gone, okay. And so it is quite confusing when you're going through history, especially something that's really hotly contested, where there's a lot of heat on both sides. And like we can even see that, like just focusing, what about Codex Rhodensis? The issues of, or what about other Latin manuscripts, or what about Erasmus, and what about this, and what about that? And there's 50 other things that can all be their own little controversies. So it's like, okay, let's just narrow it down. Stunica didn't mention it. Erasmus, he mentions it, but says that it wasn't used to back up the comma. So he's in agreement with Stunica that, like, in a sense, where he's in agreement with what we know about Stunica, that he did not use it. And so it seems to be something that later on people, I guess, maybe people who didn't read Latin properly, they saw the Rhodes Codex mentioned before and maybe after, but this was something that that they were confused about. And so so Grantley MacDonald, in his first 2011 edition of his dissertation, he had the same concept. He later on corrected himself on this. So it seems like it is a common error. I've made this error. Grantley MacDonald's made this error. This guy here, Lammy, has made this error. Maybe he corrected it later on. But I'll just keep reading through this. And so it says, and previous to that, Lopez Stunica had called Erasmus's attention to the Codex Rhodensis, which likewise had the verse. So he's claiming that again. So it says here on page 480, but two other codices are cited for it, the Rhodensis of Stunica and the Codex Britannicus of Erasmus, which by some is held to be the Codex Montfortianus in Dublin. So that's a whole another issue that would get some fireworks going. No pun intended to what happened to Rhodensis. As we have seen, however, Stunica does not say that the Rhodian Codex has the reading of the Complutensian Polyglot, but instead says that the Greek is corrupt. Okay, so to me, because I was thinking about this today, when he's saying, okay, the Greek texts are corrupt, that's something that I would say as well. I don't think that he was saying that the Greek texts that he personally has are all corrupted. I think he was just talking in general about the general consensus is there's a corruption here in the text in the Greek. And so anyway, I just thought I'd mention that's how I'm viewing what Stunica said there, which is not how he describes the Greek when citing the Rhodian Codex. Of course, Lammy himself could not tell anyone where the Rhodian Codex was, much less could he produce any collation of its various readings. So I don't think anyone knows where that is, but to try and buttress the Complutensian text, he states Codex Rabianus, and so that's why I brought up Rabianus here. So we can have a quick look at that. But Codex Rhodianus, which is in the Library of Berlin, has the verse in the same terms as the Edito Complutensis. Tischendorf claims that it belongs to the 17th century, and Martin declares it to have only been a copy of the Edito Complutensis, which is the Complutensian Polyglot. So basically they're saying it's a back translation from a printed text. But the matter remains doubtful despite the assertions of Wettstein, of Griesbach, of Teitelbaum, and of Martin. Codex Rabianus, so it's a completely different codex. That's what we're talking about. The back could possibly be a back translation. Had indeed been demonstrated to be a copy of the Complutensian Polyglot. For that discussion of manuscript 110, see the discussion here, for example. It is not included in the Gregory Island list of the New Testament manuscripts for that reason. As for the Rhodian Codex, its identity remains a mystery, despite the efforts of some scholars to track it down. And so that's the New Light in 1980. And of particular interest to my ongoing discussion with some pro-Comiohanian folks, Bentley's article notes that the then recently analyzed annotations did not cover 1 John 5:7-8, along with the 4 major notes of the Complutensian Polyglot. And so, and also because I did quite a lot of homework here, and I went to John Mill. Okay, so I actually had about 90 pages open before I jumped on, and so I was just shutting down pages that didn't relate. So, but I thought there was some that I thought maybe I should just read through these, and so I don't even know what this is. But it just says, as we have seen, Stunica tried to defend his own interpretations of the New Testament in various ways. One by referring to Codex Rhodensis in Greek, which covered the apostolic epistles. With this codex, Zunica tried to defend the Vulgate by referring to it when discussing various Greek New Testament manuscripts, including Erasmus's text. However, Erasmus could not regard this codex as reliable. It could have happened that the codex from Rhodes has been amended in the direction of the codex of the Latins, especially since it is of Rhodes, conquered by the Latins. And so, yeah, he's mentioning this type of thing. So I think in general, people are like, okay, well, Stunica, because Stunica definitely was talking about this manuscript, but he just simply didn't use it for the comma. So no, I won't shut this down because I still want to. So this is the 1 John 5:7 sources that is mentioned by Mike Holner. And so I'll put that in the mix there. Okay, so I don't think that has anything to do with it. Okay, here's a picture of Jimenez here. Cardinal Jimenez Cisneros. So I'm just looking for something that's relevant. This might be one of those big, long links that sort of goes nowhere. Okay, so there's a text of Mill here. So that's just before he goes on to something else. So this is the Comia Henningham. And he has, I think it's about 10 pages worth of material. It's quite a lot. It's quite detailed. And it's surprising just if you actually open up something like this, like I'll put it in the mix there. So Heffen Jones says, kudos to you for this, Nick. Totally fair point. Totally fair to point out Grantley McDonald's mistake. And we see it as far back as Lammy. And yeah, and no, thanks for pointing out that it was an error. And so we can see here, Mill. I won't skip back the pages that you have to skip back to get to 1 John. I think it's at the end of 1 John where he just starts this whole 10-page explanation. But he does mention the Rhodes Codex. And as far as I can remember, whenever I've studied Mill, he tends to show what deletes it first or what doesn't have it. Now, I should really back that up. So what I'll do, I'll go back a few pages. I'll find that beginning and we'll look at the Rhodes Codex in Mill, because I was searching for this for ages, looking for Rhodes. And if you've got an iPhone, you can click on Google, or just type in Google Lens, and you end up with this Google Lens thing, which is so cool. And you just put it up on the screen and it'll give you the option to translate it. And it automatically translates everything from Latin into English, like on the fly. Like if you hold it, if you're in China and you saw a sign, you hold it up, it translates it automatically in real time. So I was going through this looking for any mention of Rhodes, and as far as I can tell, the Rhodes manuscript is not mentioned because it's just simply not an issue. And the strange thing was ChatGPT was so confused, was telling me that Mill was saying it's in the Complutensian Polyglot guy said it was in the Rhodes Codex. It said Erasmus had agreed with this. Mill had it in his text. It was ridiculous. Yeah, Stunica had it in his claim to have it. Then Erasmus agreed with it, and John Mill backed that up. And I'm like, all three of those claims are wrong. And so sometimes going to things like ChatGPT, when there is this conflict of knowledge, it can just blow a valve, you know. So, so just hold on. My bandwidth might die, but I'll just skip back a few pages, and hopefully we can just look at the roads. So that whole thing was all on the comma. I guess it's not 10 pages, but it's probably with all the content there, it probably adds up to, I guess, 5 pages of double lines. So here we have mentioned Codex Rhodensis here. Now, usually it has the delete thing it says deft. So I'm looking for that. Okay, yeah, because it's saying, yeah, omittant. Alexandrinus, Vaticanus, Codex, LXX. Yeah, sometimes I can't really understand what all that means. But then it has Codex Rhodensis. So it seems like this is in the list of manuscripts that omit the Commiahani. So that's what he's saying. So John Mill's take on this was Codex Rhodensis does not have it. Okay, so he didn't have the manuscript. I think, look, I think logically he would have mentioned it to Erasmus if he had it in Codex Rhodensis. I was thinking maybe some other information would come up, but it just seems like what's happened is this wasn't even thought of until someone somewhere just went, hey, the Complutensian guys used it. It has the comma in it, and people were just a bit confused about it, and they've run with that. So I did bring up Facebook for a reason. Now I'll just go down to my chat with Mike Holner. And so this was what was mentioned here. Now, Mike Holner had highlighted this, that the Codex Britannicus of Erasmus may, like so many others, be actually lost to us. So that's a different issue. It's just, you know, for those watching, some people know that I've talked about Codex Britannicus not being Codex Montfortianus. But here it clearly says, and previous to that, Lopez Stunica had called Erasmus's attention to the Codex Rhodensis, and likewise, which likewise had the verse. So this is a claim that it was in there. So, but I think this is just a mistake. I don't think it stems back to this guy. I think it goes earlier, because something in me is telling me that it goes back earlier because I've seen it earlier. I've seen people claim that, but I can't remember where, and so I could be wrong. Okay, so what else have we got there? So I showed you Mill. So yeah, you can get all of this from John Mill. There was actually someone had made a book of just the annotations of Mill on the comma. It was like a PDF you could download, but I mean, you may as well just go to John Mill there. But yeah, if you have Google Lens on your phone, you can just read through it in real time. It's pretty cool. Well, this might be actually it. The annotations of Mill. So this is on 1 John 5:7, Richard Bentley, etc. So this is done by Thomas Burgess, it looks like. Interesting. In 1822. So yeah, he's talking about Stunica. I think I found some. Yeah, here we are. Rhodensis. Yeah, so this is actually the John Mill here. So when we're reading through, it says 2 Codex Rhodensis, Codices 5, etc. We can see that it's saying here 2 Codex Rhodensis, Complutensian. So it might add a few things or change it in a different order. It looks like it might do that, but I think it's the same information. So very interesting to go through all that. Actually, that looks like it's page 100 in a book, so that might just be just a quotation of that. So anyway, something else to look at and think about. Okay, so that is Mill, I'm pretty sure. Yes, that's Mill again. So I don't need that open. Now, sometimes you find these books, just be careful what you're downloading, but from Erasmus to Mainz, the history of Codex Vaticanus. So that, I mean, that came out last year. I mean, it's probably a copyrighted book, but I mean, it's here online, and the Rhodes Codex gets quite a mention. So the Orthodoxy nowadays use 1 John 5:7 as their showpiece, yet the Complutensians edited that passage not according to the testimony of a Greek manuscript, since it is absent in the Vatican manuscript and the Rhodian manuscripts according to Erasmus and Stonica, but from the authority of St. Thomas, the Vulgate Latin version. But I made one modification in the Vatican manuscript and in the Rhodian manuscript, instead of in the Vatican and in the manuscripts Rhodensis, for the translation issue of the name of manuscripts. Okay, so yes, there's a lot of information out there about this sort of stuff, but at the end of the day, we've looked at the source documents. I don't think we can get around that. It just seems like it was an error that has been made by a few people. And so I'll just see what else I've got. Yeah, so, but this was clearly pointed out by Stephen Avery. So kudos to Stephen for pointing that out. Here's the Rhodensis is mentioned. The only one of the Complutensian codices specified by Stonica, the Codex Rhodensis. Okay. Of interest, but yeah, here's another book. Maybe it's got Rhodensis. It says here in his critical notes, Stonica or Zuniga repeatedly referred Erasmus to a Rhodian manuscript, a Greek manuscript of the epistles made available to him by Cardinal Jimenez. This is occasionally cited by Erasmus in his annotations, though with misgivings, for in his opinion it was corrupt. I found that some Greek manuscripts have been corrected against their copies, one of which I suspect this Rhodian to be. Okay, so he also said that the Vaticanus was a back translation from the Latin. So it could be mentioned here, but okay. So he said much of the so-called Rhodian manuscript. Where is that Rhodian manuscript of his hiding out? So it's questioning, where it is. Also, my friend Zunica also flaunts his Rhodian manuscript. Is also found in the Apology against Zuniga. So I would like, the only source that I haven't seen, so I've looked at the annotations of Erasmus in the work of Grantley MacDonald, which is translated well from the Latin. I've looked at Stunica's annotations. So clearly he has the Codex Rhodensis at the beginning and at the end, but not in the substance when he's talking about 1 John 5:7. So it's in 1 John 3:16 and 1 John 5:20, but not in 5:7-8. But the only thing I haven't read is when Erasmus responds to Stunica, which would be, I would like to look at that just, I guess, for just some closure. But I think we already have closure with this concept. Let's just have a quick look. Okay. We went through that. No, they weren't really relevant. So I'll shut that down. So Francis Turretin, he has talked about Lammy. And the Lammy issue, that was brought up by Mike Holner. So he put this in my feed like a week ago. So it's quite interesting. Okay, so I'll shut that down. I'll just see what else we've got here. Yeah, so we do have this issue of Codex Rabianus. So that will be an interesting one for me to double check, because some people have said that it's a back translation of the Complutensian Polyglot, and therefore it doesn't appear as a manuscript to support the Communianium. But other people have said it was, it's rewritten from the Complutensian text, but there are some textual divergences. So you see some text has changed, but then they're saying, oh, that comes from the 1550 of Stephanus, and like some variant readings were inserted from the margin of Stephanus's edition. I guess, yeah, it does make you wonder, because some of these manuscripts, it's a pretty big thing for this to be a full fake and to be proclaimed as a fake by I'm pretty sure it was Tischendorf. I think he was the first one to say it was a fake. Maybe Wettstein. No, he added it to the list of New Testament manuscripts. And see, that's the thing too. If it is a back translation, if it is a modern document, and you see people saying it's genuine, it's like that's why we're always saying chemically test these things. So anyway, I'll put that aside. I'll shut that down. And so I'll just go through some of these comments. Hilly Billy is in the house. Whoa, Nick snuck past me. Hello, everyone. Can't stay long. Good morning, evening, whatever it is in your neck of the woods there, Hilly Billy. Heffen Jones says, laughing out loud, Google Lens and Google Translate are our friends. Yes. It is interesting looking at different translations. When I was going through some of the Revelation 16:5 material, and I was trying to translate Revelation 1:4, and I was getting the gist, but not every single little bit. And I knew that the issue of the three I Ams was there mentioned, and so it's quite interesting. It was actually TurretinFan did a good translation of that, which he tends to do. Pastor Brett is in the house. Good morning, Nick and all. So Brett has hit the road and is living the dream. And so I was watching one of the videos where he's cruising around, just preaching the gospel. Heffen Jones says, from Erasmus to Myers, I think I said Mains, is open access at its publisher. Yes, I think I downloaded that one. It's I've got so many downloads that sometimes I just lose track. And the thing is, too, they download as like a whole bunch of numbers or something, and it's like, how am I ever going to find that? Heffen Jones, yes, kudos also to Stephen Avery on this matter. Heffen says, I can get the Erasmus direct response to Stunica. Okay, that'd be great. Because, yeah, that's the only thing I think that we haven't covered yet is that issue. So TurretinFan is tuning in. And so we've been reading TurretinFan's blog and going through that. So I guess what I really should do, because I did play that video at the beginning of me saying, hey, I really need to come up to speed with a lot of these issues. And I guess, say, with like Codex Britannicus, Montfortianus, like I'm sort of developing some pretty strong conclusions on those things. One of the things that I really need to do is do a deep dive into the Complutensian Polyglot, and I think I will. This has sort of sparked me to go, look, I really need to come up to speed with that issue. With the Complutensian, like, when I was listening to the one that I did on the Commuhanium and the Complutensian Polyglot 3 years ago, it was pretty much exactly what I would say now about it. And so I don't think I've advanced. And that comes from reading material and getting more information. And so that's really what I've got to do. So Hilly's saying, welcome to Revolution, like and subscribe. Hey, Nick, good evening to you. Good morning here. Yes. Pastor Brett says, I'm getting married soon. I've been in Maine. I live in Maine now. Wow. So Brett is just, man, fireworks are going off. I can hear that romantic saxophone song. I think it's a George Michael song. It's probably not a romantic song at all, but I can hear that playing in the background. Okay, Hilly just had his 18th anniversary. We've started our own fellowship at our home. Wow, that's fantastic. That sounds great. Yeah, fireworks indeed. No, that's really good. Yeah, congratulations. That's fantastic. So I think I will pull the plug on this because I didn't want to go forever. I've only gone for an hour and 20. It's 11:15 here in Australia at night, and I've got to be up very early. So I will pull the pin on this. But this video was done in response to TurretinFan and Heffen Jones bringing up the issues of the Rhodes Codex. So the conclusion is, and what we're putting to bed, is that the whole concept of the Rhodes Codex having or being used by Stunica specifically to prove that they used or that it had the Commuhanium in it, that was shown to Erasmus as like, hey, we've gone to the Rhodes Codex. It is simply just not true. The Rhodes Codex most probably doesn't have the comma in it, or else Stunica would have said it did. And Erasmus pointed this out, and that seems to be the general consensus. Mill seems to say it doesn't have the comma in it. And it seems like a bit of a story was made, or I guess some scholar somewhere just said, oh, it was in the Rhodes Codex. So that's tripped up a few people, tripped me up, Brantley McDonald, and perhaps Mike Holner as well. But yeah, I guess we need to become more schooled on these things. So I'm interested in looking more and more into the Complutensian Polyglot. There is a lot of information out there, and so that will be awesome to look at. Now, I'll just quickly jump on Facebook. Okay. All right. So, yeah, I think I will shut this down. Just pass to Brett. Hilly says, never going to dance again, Nick. Took me a minute. Guilty feet have got no rhythm. Yeah, it's not really a wedding song, is it? Thank you, Brett. Good night, Nick. Thanks. Have a great night, Nick. No careless whisper. Heffen says he'll send some screenshots of Erasmus to Stunica in English. Well, there we go. Well, all right, guys. Thanks for joining us. I'll play my outro, and I'll see you again very soon. So Heffens can just send me a text saying, I'll send you the screenshots overnight. You have a good sleep. Yeah, you too. Okay, thanks for joining us, guys. God bless you. We'll see you again soon.